honest with you. We've got a set of possible scenarios that range from what we look like now to some sort of hybrid in between, to being fully back and functioning as we always have. We're looking at those things. We have no clue as to what the speed of this pandemic is going to take in terms of its downturn. But we're very optimistic, and I know the provost can talk in greater detail if you're looking for that, about some of the plans, but we really do want to be back on campus. We know the preference for students is an active, engaged campus, in classroom learning, interaction, both academically, socially, and every other way possible, and that's what we're working towards. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more, maybe Alberto, about some of the pre-planning for the different stages.
Sure. So first of all, thank you very much for hosting us. I do think that, as the president has said, a lot of this is going to have to do with the waves of, if there's a second wave of an outbreak. But our operational plan right now is to be back in the fall. But it would be silly for us not to have contingencies in the event that we either have to start late or have to leave early again. And things in between. I think it's probably likely that we'll be here on campus, and that what we'll have is maybe some social distancing practices and guidelines that we follow. Move classes to bigger classrooms. Look for ways to make it available for students to take some courses online while they're still on campus, but so try to maybe teach some sections a little bit later in the day, so we can break out the congestion that we see in our academic buildings during the peak times, which students know what they are. So all of those are things that we're working on. We just had a meeting right before this, a meeting with all the department chairs, and they'll be working with their deans and the faculty and trying to think through some of these possibilities. Clearly, it'll be easier for certain programs than for others. But I think the message is that we know that the best experience is the one that's on campus, and that's face-to-face and has you allowed to exchange with your faculty. And we will do everything we can to try to ensure that happens, even if it's in a slightly reduced way. As I said, with some courses online and some on face-to-face, or in a bigger room, we will strive to find solutions to ensure that we try to have face-to-face classes. So you had asked about the timing also of it, and that one is one of the ones that I think it'll be unsatisfactory, because it'll all depend. It'll all depend. Today, the governor in his briefing, as the president said, I mean, we take a lot of our tunes from the governor, so we're always in tune with his briefings. He didn't say anything about the May 4th lifting, but he didn't say yes or no. And he says he's just going to wait for what the science says and what the data says. So, without a doubt, I think that the best model is if we continue a little bit more like this with the social distancing and isolation for a few more weeks, that we can come back. It'll be more likely that a second wave is less likely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of us just joining us, this is the Points live stream with President Lapidus and Provost Cardelle, and we've just been discussing the plans for next semester. Remember, you can submit questions live via Twitter and YouTube.
I'm going to ask a financial question. So how do you plan to use the money given to you by the federal government as a relief aid?
Yeah, so you're talking about the CARES Act money?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're in the process of, first of all, you have to apply for it. So we are in the process of applying for it, and the calculations based on a formula suggest that the university would receive about $3.9 million in aid money to the campus. And that money in turn is split into two piles. Half of it, it very clearly specifies that it needs to go to students to address distress or financial hardship relative to the crisis. And then the other pile of money is still a little bit challenging to understand in terms of how it's to be distributed. It's broader in scope. I can tell you that we are in the process with the student-related money, developing a formula now so that every student receives some form of aid, but it will be based on need. So if we were to look for example, and there's a number of variables, but if we use, for example, Pell eligible students, based on those Pell scores, some have much greater need than others. So we'll try to create some sort of a graduated scale that provides some relief to everyone, but with the greatest relief going where we believe philosophically it best meets the need of the student. There's probably lots of ways to do it, but that's going to be our model. With the other half of the money, we're still exploring. It could go to enhance what I was just talking about. It's also possible that we could turn that into, for example, financial aid, and provide, again, financial aid packages with that money to support incoming students or returning students that have financial need. We talk about the financial need gap all the time, where, unfortunately, $500, $750 could be the difference between attending school and not attending school. And so if we have the ability to provide that resource, we'll get more students onto the campus and into the classrooms. That's the early thinking. We're still trying to figure it out. The model is very complicated on the second side, where there's more flexibility. But again, most likely will go to benefit students in some way.
So will that help clubs and scholarships too? Could that help that, like on campus?
I really haven't thought about clubs. I think that it most likely would go more towards covering either tuition and fees or residence hall kinds of, or perhaps the food service. I don't know if it would work its way down to sort of individual club level kinds of activities. The funny thing about the money is while certainly to me and probably to you, when we talk about millions of dollars, it sounds like a big number. When I divide it through by the number of students that we have on campus, it doesn't become that big a number anymore.
Just to clarify, how much money did the university receive from the CARES Act?
So the university hasn't received any money yet,
Mhm.
but it is due to receive $3.9 million.
Thank you.
So I know there was an email just sent about graduation. Can you just clarify what that email was for people that might have not have seen it?
Sure. I think it was a congratulatory type of message for those that are graduating, for which we understand both of our hosts are. So congratulations there. Secondly, I think that it was to remind students that the actual commencement ceremony is separate from the notion of graduation and earning the degree. So while it's our intent to hold a traditional commencement in the future, the timing of your degree conference doesn't change. So you meet the credentials for your discipline, you've passed your courses successfully, you're in good standing, you'll receive a diploma in the same timely fashion that you would had we been operating under normal conditions. And then we'll continue through the work of the commencement committee. Again, when we get our health guidance where we can meet in the larger groups, or if we need be, split the population in some way so that we can still have an in-person commencement, we'll do so.
Thank you.
Is there anything, Provost Cardelle, that I missed on that?
Well, I think that the only thing was that the email also says that there will be a postcard sent to the students with a link, and our commencement committee has worked to put together a short celebratory video that will celebrate your accomplishments. It's not to take in lieu of a commencement, but it's just to make sure that we don't let May pass without giving you the congratulations that you deserve. And it will include administration and faculty, your faculty mentors and teachers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I might just add one last piece for those that did not participate, or if there's still an opportunity to participate. The commencement committee did send out opportunities for students to weigh in on what their feelings were with regard to commencement. As you probably know, there are some institutions that elected to do virtual things and call it a day. On our campus, there was overwhelming response, and I can't remember how many students replied, but there were at least several hundred, 400 students that immediately responded to the commencement survey, indicating their willingness to sort of delay the event so that they could do it live. And so we will make every attempt to honor that request when it's safe to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I saw one of those questions. Like, I'm just briefly, like, would you invite them in December, and a quick plan of how that may look if you have one?
Sure. I know that students were less excited about that option, but if December winds up being the first time that we're capable of coming back together with a large group, a traditional May commencement fills the courtyard and beyond overflow capacity, and the recent winter December commencements, which have been combined commencements with both undergraduate and graduate students of recent times because of the growth in the graduate programs, have started to exceed the capacity of the rec center as well. We've had to use overflow venues to seat people, whether it be Kent, Weston, over in Hammond. But if that's something that we need to do, we can certainly bring and meld two classes back and do it all in one time. You're a little ahead of me on exactly what that would look like. But we do want to make sure that every student that wants to walk and do all the pomp and circumstance has the opportunity to do it.
Thank you. As I'm sure you both know, Governor Charlie Baker extended school closures for public schools until the end of the year. Will this decision have an impact on the incoming class at Fitchburg State?
I don't know if it would have an impact on the incoming class. I suppose it could. Mostly the impact has been around families with children that now have concerns about childcare and how that intersects with employment here. So as I think you probably know, along with moving students off campus, we moved all of the operations off campus, faculty and staff. And so it compounds the challenge now when we have no K through 12 operating at the same time. And we want to be sensitive to that, obviously, and make it as smooth and as easy for both employers and our employees and students. So I'm not sure, what would you think the impact would be for students?
Particularly class size. For example, seniors in particular, graduating seniors, will this switch to not being able to go back to school physically, having to take all of their classes online, would that impede their ability to graduate and
Oh,
further
I
to
see.
also attend, university here at Fitchburg State?
Yeah, I think Provost could probably speak to that better. I think the relationship, though, probably would be one-on-one, whether it was be in the classroom or online. To the best of our ability, we would try to make sure that people would graduate in a timely fashion.
Yeah, it is very possible, without a doubt, that there will be students that will be coming that now haven't been in a classroom for 6 months. But what we're hoping to do is we usually have orientation, summer orientation, which I'm sure you went through when you first started. Those are going to be pushed back to July and August, but we will still have them, and we think that that's why it's so important to have those, so that the incoming students feel that connection to the institution, know how to navigate college once they arrive. But other than that, there's been other things that we've been able to do, and that the state has allowed us to do, is to increase the number of students that we can accept that waive their SATs. If students weren't able to take their SATs, we will still take AP credits, although the AP credits, the way AP tests are being given, is going to change. So we're hoping that in terms of the transcripts and their grades and all of that, that will not impact them. We don't want to harm students for the fact that they couldn't be in class towards the end of their senior year. But we are going to have to make an effort to integrate students a lot more once they come in. I'm hoping that after being away from the classroom for a while, they may be roaring to jump back in and be a part of a community. And I know that between academic affairs and our student affairs staff, they'll be ready for that.
Awesome, thank you. And then, do you feel as though this decision by the governor is a sign towards further distancing?
I can try to answer. I mean, if you listen to his announcement, and then Commissioner Riley's announcement statement that followed, and Commissioner Riley is the commissioner for K through 12. They said it was really more about having the time to figure out how to do social distancing. So there's been nobody in those buildings now for 3 or 4 months. To be able to turn that around and separate, say, desks, figure out different shifts for the lunchroom, for instance, that's gonna take some time to plan, and they weren't gonna have the time to plan and bring students back with enough time that it was gonna make sense to them, right? So by the time you do all that planning, which it requires time, so I do think that it's not necessarily a sign for things to come. I think it's more of now all of a sudden we've given ourselves an additional 8 weeks to plan for the fall semester when we come. I may also say that even Dr. Anthony Fauci at the federal level has said that he would expect, he said that a few weeks ago now already, that he thinks that we will be in a position where students can come back to the class in the fall.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so if there is a possibility for international students will they have the opportunity to take online classes if the U.S. borders are still closed for international students?
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. yes, they can take international. They can take our online courses. Especially if they're overseas. The restrictions are when international students are here, they're allowed. They're limited to the number of online courses they can take. But we hope to be able to offer those courses internationally if they're still overseas and they can't make the trip in. But without a doubt, we probably will see a little of a decline in our international students, and that's unfortunate, and not because we don't think that the borders will be closed in September, but because most U.S. embassies, their consular services, which are the ones that give visas, are still closed, and they probably won't be open for a few more weeks. So getting a student visa always takes a little bit more time. So we expect to see a decline in our international students, but those that already had visas and were here in the spring and went back, if they already still has them, they'll be able to come back and jump back in.
Some
you.
students are wondering, while we're on this topic about like international travel, some students are wondering if there will still be abroad trips for the next 2 semesters.
We're planning for them. They're in the plans. As you know, we were able to secure nice funding to expand the number of funds that are available to students to go international. Our faculty, our chairs just today said, please let's not cancel those spring travels. So we are not going. We're not right now. But that. Now it's not only our own government, but it's overseas governments that we have to contend with on those. But our plans are to be here, and I think our plan is to be here and make those classes available for the students and those experiences for the students.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, the provost alluded to it, but perhaps not every student is familiar. So over the last few years, we've really made great efforts to increase opportunities for international travel and start to take on a bit more of a global flavor than perhaps we had in the past as a regional institution. And the provost alluded to a fairly significant gift that we received from the Clementi Family Trust, which provided significant funding through an endowment to students for international travel and international study. So certainly we are very much interested in getting that back up and running again and giving students opportunities to travel pretty extensively around the world, because we believe it's important, and students that have had the opportunity to do that have come back with sort of life-changing kinds of commentary about their experiences. And we would certainly be less of a university if we couldn't deliver that. So the sooner we can get that going with safety, we'll get it going.
Thank you so much.
Just go back to a safety question for like students that are going to come back on campus and for future students. Can you just share some of your plans for students who want to live on campus, and that it's to ensure them it's a safe, clean environment and they're not worried?
Yeah, sure. So again, it's hard for me to talk about the requirements for social distancing and what recommended density or capacity numbers might look like in spaces. I can tell you that at least from a cleaning, sanitizing perspective, when everyone was moved off of campus, we brought in a service that mists. It basically, they have a disinfecting agent that becomes atomized. It comes out as a mist. You might have seen it on TV. And they walked every space on this campus. And then we locked those buildings down. So the access to the facilities has been very, very minimal. So it's our belief that if there was anything, it has been eradicated through this process. And certainly by the time we get to the fall, come September 1, it will have been months that those buildings have gone untouched. So I'm not a scientist, but I don't believe anyone has suggested that the virus can endure for long periods of time without a host. So from that perspective, I think we're safe. We added, before we moved students off campus, tremendous numbers of hand sanitizers. They were like on every corner of a hallway. The Clorox wipes before they turned to gold were everywhere. So we will probably continue that behavior moving forward, whether it's specified or not, as a means of reducing some of the risk. But as far as the distancing requirements, we'll wait and see what we're told is the desired action.
Thank you. I'd like to transition now to ask a couple of questions about the morgue that's in Landry Arena.
Yep.
My first question is, what was the decision-making process for turning the Landry Arena into a morgue?
Okay, so first, let me the Landry Arena itself did not turn into a morgue. So there's no people that have since passed away that are being stored in the facility. So what you have over there is the use essentially of the parking lot and some of the utilities, power, internet connectivity, that kind of thing, from the building to outside facilities. There's a tent over there that is used as a medical tent where those that are brought in, I believe, are tested as to whether they passed away or not from COVID-19. So one of the things that is important to understand with that arrangement is that the belief was that hospitals and funeral homes would not have the capacity during the surge, and they needed a place to competently store those that passed away, particularly in the winter months before they were able to have either religious services or formal burials. So that was sort of a standard procedure. That operation is run by MEMA, which is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Association. And so they've taken charge all across the state with these kinds of setups. They approached the university. We felt that it was a positive thing to do for the community. There was no risk to anyone in the area because everything is self-contained. And so we simply agreed to do so. We've made other accommodations as well that we have not had to use. So for example, the residence hall, some of them have been set up. Initially, the thinking was if there was an overflow of people that were self-isolating, that might be a place to go. That was never used. There was also space set up for first responders, for medical professionals that did not have the disease, but felt that they couldn't go home to their families, or they were running long medical shifts and their drive home was too long. So could they stop at the university instead of going from Leominster Hospital, say, to God knows where to go home and then come back? None of those services have been used. But as a state university, we felt we had a role to support the state and our communities, and that was the thought process. And we continue to do it as requests come in.
Thank you. So, given that there is a potential for COVID-19 to resurface in the fall, are university health services working towards providing COVID-19 testing and other virus-specific care?
There is some talk of that, but I'm not sure we're honestly there yet. I mean, the states around the country continue to struggle just to get the basic supplies in the hospitals. So it hasn't reached down yet to small operations like ours. We have had some interaction with a couple of students that believed they had contacted it through our health services. None of them were tested there. They were sent to their primary care physicians or to the hospital, depending upon where in the process those people came forward. But we haven't had any actual cases or action thus far in health services. But you're absolutely right that that's one of the things on our list to think about for the return of students, how that health service operation might look different and what kinds of resources and what kind of training those people might need if this becomes a regular part of our lives moving forward.
Sorry, thank you so much.
Sure.
I would like to ask a clarifying question. So as of Wednesday, April 22nd, there have been 158 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the city of Fitchburg.
Yeah.
Of course, none of those cases appear to be students, but I would like to know, are any members of the Fitchburg state community in that number of confirmed cases in Fitchburg?
I believe that health services received 5 student calls that I believe said they tested positive, all of which occurred well after their departure from campus. So I guess if your question is, was there a case where there is a student or an employee of the university identified during the time in which the student population was on campus? The answer was no.
Thank you.
If this pandemic does continue, and so for students that work on campus, will there be any aid to help them pay, because they do pay for school through the working on campus? So I was wondering if you could touch on that.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see what that environment would look like. We do get federal funding for student workers. I don't know what kind of relief they might give us for students that qualify for that. Those monies and what kinds of work they would or wouldn't have to do to collect those monies. As far as providing money for jobs that don't exist, that would be a little harder for us to think through on the campus. But going back to the CARES Act money that started the conversation and other resources that we might be able to accrue from this pandemic, students might be able to receive funding in other ways that perhaps won't require work or as many work hours. I don't know if the provost has other thoughts on that.
No, I think that I know that we've made allocations to the work study across the university for next year. So the plans are to have those work study students in place. And it'll be a matter of the ability. So if the operational plans that we have now, which is to be on campus, then those students will be awarded those work studies, and they'll be able to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A lot of students have expressed concerns about their living situation. Specifically, will the dorms be open? And if they are open, will there be any kind of restrictions on communal living spaces like shared bathrooms or shared living rooms?
Yeah, again, I go back to the I don't know answer. Again, I suppose anything is possible, right? I really honestly don't know what medical professionals might say. They might say go back and operate as normal. They might say no. we have to take all the residence halls and move them to singles as opposed to doubles or even triples in some cases. They might say no communal restrooms, which would force us to take some of those buildings offline. I just don't know.
Of course. In that case, more back to like international students. So I understand, of course, that you said that you don't know, but a lot of international students have concerns about planning for the future and their living situations. Would you be able to accommodate international students, either putting them up in dorms here on campus or helping them find living arrangements elsewhere in the United States?
Well, again, certainly we would try to provide them residence hall opportunities on campus if it was possible to do so, as we do regularly. Many international students do reside in some of the housing opportunities around the campus, and I would assume that those would be available, and we could probably assist them as their challenges might be greater than a student that, say, lives in the state that has the opportunity to sort of shop apartments before they arrive. And I think we've done that in the past as well. We've helped students find acceptable neighborhood living accommodations. So the answer is yes. I mean, we live in a new world now. And so we have to start to think through what new issues arise from this situation. And if that becomes a service that we need to provide on a more standardized and regular basis for international students, then absolutely we'll do so. And we have an international studies program. We've got a great team over there. They understand pretty well the needs of international students, and I don't think it would be much of a challenge to add that component if need be. We're pretty versed in what properties exist in the neighborhoods and who rents those, and I think we could certainly make it work.
Thank you so much for your answer. I understand that there are a lot of things that you can't answer, especially in this uncertain time, but what can you say just generally to students about living in this uncertain time and preparing for their futures and their education?
Oh, Alberto, you popped up on that one.
Oh, no, I was I was just taking a deep breath. Well, I think that it's I think we need to look at this moment. I was listening to I'll borrow from somebody else's. So I was listening to an interview of this gentleman who was 107 years old, and he was celebrating the 100th birthday of his girlfriend. And they couldn't do it together, so they were doing it by video. And they asked him, what he thought about this. And he had survived the Spanish flu. He was 5 years old when the Spanish flu. And then he said, this is just one more problem, one more issue that he's had to go through. He went through Spanish flu, 2 world wars, and the depression. So I do think that this is a moment for students that are the class of 2020 will always have an asterisk that is not only determined that they didn't have a graduation, but it'll be an asterisk that you graduated in a momentous time, and that you will have the opportunity to help us come out of this. So I would say that think about the crises as opportunities. Has this new crisis created a new calling for you? Now all of a sudden made you rethink what you'd want to do, and see it that way, instead of saying, well, I couldn't have my graduation. No, you will have that asterisk, but it's an asterisk of pride that you were able to finish under such difficult circumstances.
Thank you so much.
Is there any plans for additional professor-student lessons to how to take online classes for a full semester if it comes to that?
Could you ask the question one more time?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. Will there be any additional professor-to-student lessons of how to take online classes if next
Oh,
semester needs to?
yeah, sure. The provost might, I know we're working on some additional training opportunities on both sides. Again, we were thrown into this with no planning. We would have clearly done it differently if our goal was to move online by choice. We would have approached this exercise very, very differently. So I think that we do need to make a little bit of a separation between how quickly this had to ramp up this time and what students might expect in the fall if we have to come back fully online. We'll debrief with students, we'll debrief with faculty at the end of this semester. We have people that are trained to help build curriculum, to move it to online formats, to teach instructors different skills for pedagogical delivery. So yes, I mean, it's a learning exercise. If I think that's what was your question. And so I think that we would see significant probably changes in the way the interactions occur. Again, the provost can maybe speak for some of the things that are already underway relative to your question.
Yes, I think that, and I think the president hit all of them. I just want to maybe preface it or say that the reality is that, you know, we're already, the university, Fitchburg State is one of the leaders in online education. We offered our first programs back in 2008. And for those programs that already are all structured in online, faculty have to go through a training. Their courses get looked at, their sites get looked at, and to give feedback on how to improve them. And so we're already a leader in that, especially at the graduate level. And so as the president said, you know, in March, we almost had to do sort of a drive-by training on this. But we will be now expanding on those existing trainings that we have, making them more available. And absolutely, they'll be available for students, tips for students on how to prepare themselves, how to learn, because it is slightly different to learn online and remotely than it is to be in front of the classroom. So both of those will be available.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any notable changes to the 2020 to 2021 academic calendar that should be noted?
Not right now. Our plans right now is the calendar will remain the same. You know, we made changes to this year's calendar, the one that we're just wrapping up right now. But right now we don't have plans to change that calendar. Again, sometime if there are needs to change, there'll probably be sometime in the summer that we will be able to make that determination.
Thank you.
Can you just touch on how the loss of learning for students who use labs and special equipment on campus?
Yes, I mean, let me also preface it by saying that a lot of the literature out there says that you can still have good learning online. So I think the struggle is not that it's online or that it's remote. The struggle was that we had to turn this so quickly. So again, we have chemistry professors who have been offering online labs for a few years already. So there is a way of doing it. The problem is that how fast we had to do it. Faculty have been very good at adapting. And so I know that certain faculty have demonstrated the lab exercises and taped themselves doing that. Again, not the same as maybe doing it yourself, but it approximates it. Our nursing department went to simulated online clinical rotation. So if instead of them really being in a hospital, it was simulated online, and they were given scenarios that they had to deal with patients. Again, maybe clearly not the same as being in front of a bed with a patient, but at the same time, the Nursing Association, which is our accreditor, has said that it is of equal value, and the nursing students can progress. So I think that we will have to make sure that we're ready if we have to do this. Again, most likely our plans are we won't, but if we have to, we're now much better understanding how to do it. And it's not a matter of not learning, but maybe trying to learn the same thing in a different way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that there would be resources available to students when it comes to online learning, how to most effectively learn online and things of that nature. But what about professors? Will there be lessons or resources available to them about how to teach online?
Yes, and those it'll be a much more. As I said, we already have those training labs. They already are online already, and student and faculty can take it. But we are repackaging it so that faculty can now either take the whole set of training, or if they just need a little bit of help in one particular area, that they can get different ideas on how to do it. So as I said, we have faculty on campus who have been doing this for a very long time. And they are good resources for some of their colleagues who they can help think about how best to adapt their own courses. So we are going to expand those opportunities. We're also going to expand the opportunities to use Google Hangouts, because that was a recent adoption by the university, and Google has a lot of strengths, and those need to be reintroduced, and those little tricks be taught on how best to use that platform to offer those courses.
Thank you.
I might just add one thing to the Google comment, because it is relatively new for us. We added the platform this year. We took Outlook away and changed it. And there is a counter, if you will, that identifies how much activity there is. And just in this short period of time, there have been in excess of 61,000 Google Hangout meets, which is unbelievable in terms of the interaction.
Thank you. Let's talk more about Fitchburg State and the city, more tangible things. What is the responsibility of Fitchburg State to the city of Fitchburg? There have been a lot of developments proposed to expand the university into the city and revive downtown.
Again, we strongly believe that that we have a sort of steward of place responsibility for Fitchburg. We are the largest employer in the city. I think that at least as long as I've been here, my position has been that the university is a valuable resource for the city. We have a lot of smart people here, so both faculty and students, there's great opportunities to interact with the city. I think one of our strengths academically and something that we are pushing strongly in the strategic plan that will ultimately roll out next year, that more and more authentic learning, if you will, real world projects, real world opportunities produce win-win situations for students, for the community, to solve real problems where the city might be looking to move ahead, for which they're resource poor, that the university can help with. We do have some resources that we have provided the city that result in benefits to students. So for example, we played a significant role in the paving and lighting of Pearl Street down to John Fitch. Students walk that way to the park. Initially, it didn't have sidewalks, lighting was poor. So we've made contributions in that way. We moved across to the street to the Mart and set up opportunities there, professional studies. We have a very, very large adult senior learning population under the acronym of ALPHA that we contribute to, one of the largest in the state by a significant margin. And then, of course, we were working on the theater block as well. And we believe that that also adds a strong cultural piece, both for our students and the resources that we don't have on campus.
Absolutely.
Way to
But if, yeah, absolutely. But more specifically, I think what I would like to know is how is Fitchburg State giving back to the community amid COVID-19?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Again, mostly through the efforts that are coordinated by MEMA. So we have reached out to first responders for housing if they need it. The mobile morgue was another example. We provided all the resources that we had around protective equipment. We gave them all of our resources from nursing, from sports and exercise science, from the sciences, gloves, gowns, that kind of thing. That's been our contribution. We've tried to help whenever asked. We've been fortunate, by the way, I might say that the numbers, although significant, have been relatively small. And so we haven't seen a lot of stress, I think, in the city of Fitchburg, at least around the disease.
Thank you. And then can you speak at all to how you plan on supporting the city after COVID-19?
Again, I think similarly, within the resources that we have. It's a little tricky here. Understand that our financial allocations come from the state to support higher education, and student tuition and fees come in to support students in pursuit of their degrees. So it gets a little tricky to take those resources and then use them elsewhere if I'm not benefiting students.
Absolutely. But I do feel like it is fair to say that the students, they do depend on the city. It's important for the city to thrive because
Oh yeah,
students absolutely, they need the city to thrive. The city is home to Fitchburg State. So
sure.
Yeah, and I think that and I could add also that our Crocker Center for Civic Engagement will continue to strengthen our programming with our traditional partners to provide. We provide a lot of volunteer time and a lot of service learning time to many of our nonprofits, which we can safely predict will probably have greater needs even after the current outbreak. And therefore, our program, our director, our coordinator there is ready to start working with faculty and students to provide those assistance.
thank you so much. Do you have any things that you would like to say to the student body or just in general while you have their attention?
Sure. Well, I guess for me, I'd like to thank students for being good spirited about a situation that they certainly and we certainly would not prefer to be in. We've been working this program, Falcons Supporting Falcons. I don't know if you've received a call yet, but we have faculty and staff calling every student on the roster to check in on them and see how they're doing. Most are reporting that while they maybe are bouncing off the walls in their home, are generally doing pretty well. Their academics are progressing. They are trying to stay active with some of the clubs and organizations that are still running. I think similar to the provost comments before, that I've been very inspired by the upbeat nature that students have exhibited, that they're making the best of a tough situation. And we're super proud that they are taking that approach, because a negative approach would have resulted in, I think, exacerbating the negativity already of the situation. So again, we look forward to those that are graduating, celebrating with them. And we're really excited about the incoming class and returners for the fall, and hope we get up and going and start to operate as we always have.
Yep. And the only thing I would like to add is the campus is a little lonely, so we're looking forward to seeing you in the fall.
Thank you. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who joined us virtually and submitted questions. The staff of The Point will continue to gather and report on essential information and document the voice and stories of our community. I would also like to remind all of you to contribute your experiences to our COVID-19 archive. Please visit www.fitchburgpoint.com for more information on the archive and to upload photos and stories that represent your experiences during this unique time in our history. Thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Stay well.
You too.